We had some points of agreement on this episode.
Yeah, we actually agree. We're going to end this week by agreeing on things, but coming from the total opposite ends of the argument, which is basically that people don't understand anything about privacy at all. They don't understand whether they're being tracked or not, although that's debatable. And they certainly don't understand the impact of being tracked online.
True.
Nailed it. Yep.
The first link we got to the story was this Tech Explorer article. Americans don't understand what companies can do with their personal data, and that's a problem. How do people not understand? How do people not understand? Although I'm actually going to... no, they don't. All right, go ahead. How do people not understand at this point?
I said it before, but I think it's a lot to do with the fact that the impact of our data being tracked is actively hidden, or companies go out of their way to downplay the impact of and where they get the data from.
Hidden in plain sight.
Well, not exactly plain sight.
Well, you shouldn't.
If you want to go
the whole I have nothing to hide feels like a conspiracy. Like you are being conditioned to feel like you have nothing to hide online, when in fact you have plenty to hide online.
Yeah.
So many things that you should not be providing to the public, you are providing to the public. And it allows you to get scammed super easily. So someone will say, an argument there will be, what, they're not going to scam me. How can they scam me? They don't want to scam you. They want to scam your company that you work for. They want to scam the hospital that you're staying at. They want to scam all of these things that will allow them to potentially get a bunch of money out. Now, sure, yeah, of course, there are scammers that target end users or individuals, but the big money is for companies to get a footing to be able to ransomware or blackmail or whatever. So, yeah.
I think this one is more about like the stuff that companies track about you. Am I right there?
So in the article is an article about a study, and this was the first link. And what I thought was interesting here, it says Americans don't understand what companies can do with their personal data. That's a problem. But it actually, this is a reprint that's syndicated probably from Annenberg School of Communications at Penn or University of Pennsylvania. And I liked this headline better. Americans don't understand what companies can do with their personal data. Oh, that's the same one. Is this the same article? All right, never mind. I think they actually changed the headline from before. Or I'm just losing my mind. But this is the original article. It links to the study, which I also have some excerpts from, and that I think are interesting. You want to see what I
Yeah, show us.
Yeah,
Show us your work.
So I pulled out 2 blocks.
Well, we
One
can't see anything,
talks
by the way.
about. Oh. So 2 blocks. One block, and there were more questions. There was a whole page of questions, but I didn't want to go through the whole thing. So I just picked a couple samples and put them side by side. This top block is about what people know is happening online. If I go to a website, they can collect information. 71% know that that's actually happening. A company can tell if I open an email, even if I don't click. Most people know that that's happening. The majority of people know or don't know, but only 10% think you can't do that. A website cannot track my activities across devices unless I log in. 46% of people knew that that's not true. 36%, small minority, thought the opposite of what was true. Privacy policy means they won't share my information. 44% knew that that's not true. So my takeaway is people know they're being tracked. They know how they can be tracked. They know that companies are tracking them and can do whatever they want with the information. The problem here, and according to this top section, to my mind, is not that they don't know. This study proves to me that they do know that this is happening. Yes or no?
I guess if they think about it, it's common for people to know, but I don't think it's something that is actively reinforced enough, I guess.
Well, okay. I don't think people know that you're being tracked, that they're being tracked, because a few years ago, it was all, it loops me back to the whole "I have nothing to hide"
I hate
statements
that
that were coming out, and people are aware that tracking is occurring. People are not aware of what the data that is being tracked can be used for or against them with. And again, I will mention Roe versus Wade, perfect example. But we've seen this in so many totalitarian or crazy countries where if you type the wrong search in the whatever state allowed a search engine, like, you're gonna have a knock at the door a day later. Or if you're talking on a forum or in a fucking Discord about the wrong thing, or whatever the Discord equivalent is in that country, like, you're gonna get a knock the next day on your door to be interrogated and potentially jailed, or worse.
I think that's the title of the article as well. Sorry, John, I cut you off.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, the way, yes, people know they're being tracked. People understand in a surface level that they are being tracked, but they don't know the extremes or the lengths some individuals or companies will go, like browser fingerprinting, or like tracking you across multiple devices with no other signals. They're like, oh yeah, we have a 89%. We're 89% sure that this is the same person based on the way they use their mouse and the way they type, and the combination of the two. Like, there's so many scary things that is being put into the internet that no one is really aware of.
Yeah, I heard an
Peter
example.
would know more than most.
I heard an example from a guy doing, but yes, I totally agree. People do know what's happening, but they do not understand the implications of what's happening. Exactly. But to what you were saying about how people are being tracked, go ahead, Peter, and I'll give him a cool example.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with what you said. They don't understand the impact of the tracking, so they don't care.
Right.
So think of a horror story to share if you have one, but a cool example of not necessarily tracking, but the way John mentioned fingerprinting. I heard somebody talking about they were a click fraud company, avoidance, trying to stop click fraud from happening. Click fraud is when you collect revenue money for ad clicks that are not legitimate clicks. And one of the things they were able to look at was based on the page render time, they could figure out what your CPU was, like how powerful your CPU was on your computer, and use that to identify whether they thought you were a legitimate user or a fraudulent user. Because if you were using a virtual machine, which a lot of the fraud companies would do, then it would render the page faster or slower than an actual normal computer. I thought that kind of thing they're looking at and able to track and identify is super, super interesting. You would never guess that was happening. But do you have a horror story, Peter?
Yeah.
Or John?
Go ahead, Peter.
Of an actual case where, and I'm asking because I hope you do. I'm not trying to set you up to not have one, but either of you can think of a story where somebody's data was used against them in a devastating way.
I have one. Yeah. Do you want to go first, Peter? Do you have something?
Specific one?
Very specific. So actually, I wish I would have pulled it up because it's so good. But a few years ago, I read an article written from this, privacy researcher or privacy person, very tech savvy person. And I think it was like a blog post. I don't remember how I found it. Maybe it was on Hacker News or something. And this person very easily figured out what their ad ID was. And ad ID is, we all have one. We're all labeled, basically, us people. We have a little happy tracker that keeps track of all the shit we click through, thanks to Google, and how basically they have a monopoly on advertisement. So this person figured out their ad ID, and they downloaded some really sketchy apps that were used widely. I don't remember the apps. This was like 5 or 6 years ago that I read this article. And they had location services on, and they were running on Android, and they were able to purchase their data after they were able to purchase the tracked data from their phone after it was made available, like a month or so later. And what they did was, to prove that they were able to do this, is they'd go on a walk at a certain time around their neighborhood and do a specific route every time. And then they were able to purchase basically a map of the route that they went, I think, through just geolocation plus like longitude and latitude. I don't remember exactly how they got it, but they were able to the like foot detail, be able to see where that person was, and then build a profile on their habits and say, oh, this person goes out on a walk every Wednesday at 3, and they go to this store on their walk. You get where I'm going. So that is one way that a stalker or an attacker could get to you.
There was a really similar thing with Strava, where the military were given Fitbits or fitness trackers, and they went on runs every day around the base. And because Strava at one point had runs sort of shared by default, I think shared publicly by default, it was possible to map out the location of a secret military base that wasn't on maps or whatever, because
they'd run
this like line around in the middle of the desert. The
Strava
classic
had
one
another.
It's happened. Sorry, go on.
Strava had another issue with a lot of people share their maps, but you'll start from your home, go to your exercise, and return to your home. And so you would see where everybody's starting point was. So the solution they came up with was they would create a bubble around your house. But then the problem is, if you leave and return from 2 different directions, they can just triangulate to the center of the circle to figure out where your same house is. So, and then what was your other example?
Well, the other one is with the abortion clinics. People going to abortion clinics.
That's a good example.
And
it's a great example.
Their geolocation data being not shared with the government, but tracked by a private company and then bought by the government. And it wasn't a problem when abortion was legal. And now that it's not in some states, it's being used against, people who had abortions and actively looking for people who are going to abortion clinics.
Right.
The classic one is the Target data that Target sent out promotion for to a woman who was pregnant. And I think it was her dad found out or something like that, because she was, based on her buying habits.
Right.
That's a pretty famous one, I think.
To wrap up this study, the first half shows that people know. I agree. So, and then there's 2 things from that. One is I agree with both of you that they don't understand. They know what's happening. They don't understand what the implications are and how it could possibly use and how it could harm them. But also, and this I thought was super interesting, they asked a block of questions about government role and legality. So in the United States, the federal government regulates the types of digital information companies collect about individuals. The answer is false. Most people didn't know. Most people assumed that they were being protected by the government or didn't know. Large cities have banned the use of facial recognition technology. Most people don't know that that's true. Federal government requires internet companies for users to be opt-in to track. The largest group of people didn't know that that was false. And then the Section 230 thing limits liability. So what I took away from this section is that people are assuming the government is protecting them much more than they are.
Which is a reasonable thing to do, right? I mean, it's when you consider a situation which seems wrong to most people, you assume that shouldn't be allowed, right?
Well, so but I think it's not that they. So go ahead, Peter. Then I'll clarify my thought.
Yeah, I think another takeaway from this is that most people think that facial recognition is a bad thing. Because if you assume that the government is going to prevent companies from doing it or states from doing it, that's because it's not good, right? Why would they be prevented otherwise?
Yeah. So I think my conclusion is actually the opposite. My conclusion is that people assume that if it was bad, the government. People assume if it was bad, the government would prevent it. Therefore, the government's either preventing it or it's not bad. So it's kind of a false sense of safety.
How was the question phrased?
I think, like I said, just either is the statement true or false. In the United States, the federal government regulates the types of digital information companies can collect about individuals. It's not true. 24% said false, which was the wrong answer. 30% said they thought it was true, which is 24% knew it was false, which is true. The correct answer. 30% thought that it was true that they were being regulated, which is the incorrect answer. So more people assumed they were being regulated than knew that they weren't. And so I think that contributes to the sense of security. Yes, I know I'm being tracked, but I'm sure it's being regulated. So if it could really be harmful to me or used against me, then that's not going to happen because the government's got to be doing its job.
Yeah, that's fair. Because that's their job. Yeah, like you say, that's what they're there for, right? They're to protect us and make sure that companies don't get away with doing bad things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all really depressing. I mean,
this one's tough.
The fact that people don't understand the impact, the fact that some people don't even realize it's happening. What was one of the facts? It was 52% of people assumed that things were being tracked, and so that means 48% didn't realize that.
Sure, but like company can tell if I open an email even if I don't click anything. Most people know that that's true. Only 10% didn't think that was possible.
Still nearly 30%. Still nearly 1 in 3 people don't realize that might be the case.
Sure. Well, half don't know. A small percentage actively thought the opposite, but most people know.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
71, if you just think about like navigating on the web, 71% know that it can be tracked. They know that they're being tracked navigating around the web. So
then a website cannot track my activity across devices unless I log into the same account on those devices. That's a 50% wrong.
No, it's 40% correct. The correct answer is false. Companies cannot track that unless I log in. I mean, you could do IP matching and make some assumptions and things like that, but this is a challenge in marketing. If I want to track somebody who sees my ad on their phone, but then goes to their computer to buy, it's very difficult to make that connection. As a marketer, that's something that I struggle with. People are actively, people are correctly identifying that that's a challenge for me.
So we both think that they're very depressing numbers either way. Like there's not enough ways of tracking people, and I'm like, what people don't realize. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying people are more, to my mind, more people are aware of this than I actually would have guessed.
And I'm saying not enough people are.
Sure, but in either case, very few of these people actually know what the implications are, whether they know it's happening or not. So, and they assume that the government's going to take care of them either way. So it's kind of like they're just set up for failure. So good luck.
It's all a loss. Everything's a loss.
Our audience knows.
Well, great way to end the recording for this week.
Yeah.
On a happy note.
We're all fucked. See ya.